What's going on, guys? This is Pete Clark back with the Carrot Poker Podcast, episode number 89, where I get interrogated, featuring my old friend and student, Hunter. Welcome on the show, man. How's it going?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm doing pretty good. I've got my new setup here, so I'm sitting here in like an absolute fortress of monitors on my desk right now. I've got two of them, but they're like surrounding me, and I'm cocooned in this like web of running solvers on one and talking on the Discord and the other one. Then I forget which mouse I need to grab, and it's great, man. I'm loving it. I'm loving the new setup.
Yeah, I've seen photos. It looks great.
It's good. I feel like that nerd, I've finally like ascended to that level of geekdom, that nerddom that I wanted to obtain my whole life, and dreams are possible.
Yeah.
So let's just say a little bit about you. I know you've got a bunch of questions for me today, and it's going to be one of these episodes where I impart like any poker wisdom I have through being drilled on a variety of topics. Well, more personal, I believe, than technical today. Is that right?
Yeah, for the most part. I just almost like getting to know you. I have a study group that is obviously been coached by you for a while, and we kind of were just talking back and forth and realized on a personal level we really don't know you all that well.
Yeah.
Even though we've been getting coached from, I think I've been getting coaching from you since 2017 or so.
Yeah, and that's because I'm so bad at marketing, right? That's because I'm like terrible at putting myself out there and being like, hey guys, I have $200 to give away, and this is like a video of me with my dogs. I just don't do any of that stuff, I don't do any of that promo stuff. So yeah, fair enough. Let's dig a little bit. I've nothing against questions of that nature. A bit about you first though. So you've been my student for a few years on and off, and I understand you've got a very serious and busy job like in your occupation and stuff, and so you don't have like a ton of time for poker, right? But you're like that guy that gets up super early while the rest of the house is still asleep, and that's like your poker time, right?
Yeah, pretty much. So yeah, I've been getting coaching from you since like I said, since 2017 or so. I'm an attorney, so I work a lot of times. I work pretty crazy hours, have two kids, but yeah, I get up typically 4:45, 5 o'clock in the morning. My wife has to be at work early too, so I'll get in my study, and that's typically when we've done our lessons too, or this time right now. So.
Yeah, that always made me feel more tired because I knew it was like 4:45 in the morning for you. So even though it was like 9:45 and I just got out of bed in those days before I had like the farm animals and stuff to tend to, right? And then I remember it would be like 5 a.m. for you, and I'd just be thinking like, God, just the fact this guy's out of bed at this time is making me want to go back to bed. Like it blew my mind.
Yeah, it's the only, honestly, it's like kind of the only quiet time I have, so I just take advantage of it when I can.
No, I get that. I mean, we all need our sort of man cave time on our own, right? Like that's very important for my mental health, is not being harassed when I'm in this room, and just this being my space where I have my, have that peace and quiet to do what I want. I think that's cool. All right, man. So how's poker going for you these days? Are you able to put in some volume, or you're like, where are you sort of playing your volume at the moment?
Well, I was playing on Ignition. I switched from ACR to Ignition, and then now there's some issues with the states. I won't necessarily go into it, but it's kind of killed my poker playing for the past month or so, but I think I've figured out a way. Plus live poker's really not going on. They're running in my local card room, I think they're running 5 max with plexiglass in between, and I'm not personally comfortable going there and playing it. So,
sounds like a dream though. You don't have to be near anybody, and you get to play 5-handed. That sounds like if that opened up in my local village, not sure why it would, with all these old people coming out of church, but if it did and it was down the road from me, I would go there. Even if it opened up in Glasgow, my city, I'd probably play a bit of it, but my
poker room's pretty slow in general, so I have been lucky enough to kind of catch it where I've had 6 to 4 players at the table, and then a couple times I've had some people, I guess honestly, kind of get aggravated with me. So they've challenged me to heads up. So I've gotten some pretty small ones before.
Wow.
And it is absolutely killing me not to go up there right now, knowing that it's 5-handed, because it's just kind of a dream game.
Yeah. That's amazing. Like the live fish, like the recreational player, getting annoyed that you're playing like the 28 VPIP that you should be playing 5-handed, and then challenging you to heads up because you have the audacity to raise like 25% of the time from the hijack or something. It's like really funny.
Right. Yeah.
Anyway, right, let's get into some digging about me then. I can only talk about things other than myself for so long before I get bored. So let's start.
Yeah, I have to say I'm kind of looking forward to this. I've been getting grilled by you for a few years at five
Yep.
o'clock in the morning. I kind
Yep.
of get to turn the table on you.
That's right. Yeah, I remember like there was a episode for correct me if I'm wrong, but you came on this podcast like a couple of years back, right? And we did an episode about your red line and about like your sort of mental game issues.
Yeah, I think probably about 2 years ago or so.
Yeah, yeah, and that was symptomatic of like the problems you had back then. I do remember those 5 a.m. grillings. Like, what are you doing? Look at this play. Like, how has this happened? And like trying to get to the bottom of it. It's funny.
Oh yeah. All right, so I guess let's start with just the standard questions. When did you start playing poker, and how did you begin your poker journey?
I began my poker journey actually just as like a really serious recreational player. Like, if you go back to the very start, it began with this made up game that me and my friends played. That was actually 5 card draw, but you had 3 swaps, triple swap it used to be called, different from triple draw because we didn't know about triple draw back then. So this was like 5 card draw high with 3 swaps, but there was no betting until all the swaps had been completed. So you just got 5 cards and then you just swapped cards over and over again until you had a boat, basically, and then you started betting. But with the betting, there was no end to the betting. It was like you could bet whatever you wanted. It was no limit. But if you bet 10 pence, let's say, and the guy called, you could bet 10 pence again on the same street and could just keep doing it infinitely until someone said, I will pay my money into the pot to see your hand without you paying it, and you accepted that. So the guy that was like with the depolarized range, right, that was doing the calling would be like, I'll see you for 50 pence. And the guy with the polarized range that was betting, I didn't think of it in these terms back then, would be like, no. And then keep betting. And then the guy would be like, I'll see you for £1. And then he'd be like, okay, yeah, I've got quads. That's fine. And then win that £1. Or if he's bluffing, no, and just continue piling 10 pence. It was really absurd. Like, sometimes you would bet like £1.50. Like, this is a lot of big blinds, right? Like £1.50 in series of 10 pences. And then when you bet the 16th 10 pence, the guy would fold. So this is my beginning.
So did you just have a group of friends you just kind of played?
Yeah, we just went round to like my buddy's house, and we just like, we were like 16, and like we just ate like cookies and played poker for like actual coins. It was kind of like classic beginning. But then after that, I got into online when I was about 19, 20 years old, started taking it seriously, grinded SNGs for a while, did pretty well, got involved in a place called Flop Turn River, that had some very good players in it. Ben Sulsky was there, the late Nutsinho, Richard Lindecker was there. Like, a lot of these people who at the time were just super strong were there giving advice for free and stuff. So that was really what made me a decent player. And then in 2010 I just ran like God and just couldn't lose a hand, and like clambered up like several cash stakes, up from like 50 NL up to like 400 NL at the time, because I just couldn't lose a pot. So that was easy, and everyone thought I was really good, but really I just couldn't lose a pot for that year. And then I got really good after, well, not really good, but I got much better at poker when solvers became a thing, and when I started studying seriously. But the irony is now I use those skills to coach more than actually play. So back when I made money playing, I was probably like much worse than everybody thought, kind of ironically, like 10 years ago.
How would you describe your initial playing style? Are you a nit at heart?
No, I'm definitely an aggro monkey at heart, but I'm also prone to bouts of nittiness when I think people are too tight. So I'm definitely, my playing style back in the day was like very aggressive with folding. Like, I was not afraid to make very, very big folds, and there used to be a kind of glamour behind making big folds, right? Like, I remember you used to be able to show a big fold, and then if you were right, it would be like almost as cool as running like a really big bluff. That seems to be gone now. Like, folding is really out of fashion at the moment. But yeah, I was very much like aggro and wanted to bet all the time, but also very like up for making big exploitative folds in real life.
Yeah, I knew I liked you. I obviously have the aggression part down to a fault.
Yeah.
I just see that you disparage nits in our Discord group jokingly, so I'm just making sure you're not projecting on your part,
No, there's nothing joking about it. I hate nits. I wish they would all just go away. Like, when someone posts a terrible fold on the Discord, it brings back that old part of me that wants to like berate everyone, because back in 2010, the way you got and gave poker advice was by being like, you moron. That was standard, right? So when I see like a really bad fold, it brings out that side of me that's just like, explain yourself to me now, this kind of authoritarian, trolly internet persona coach. So no, man, like the Discord folds that we see, they get a lot more hate than like any of the bad calls or bad raises that we see, and that's because I'm like such an anti-nit at heart. Like I hate nits. I hate people who roll up to play poker and think that because they don't open 8-6 off on the cutoff that they'll win. Like that just absolutely blows my mind.
So were you one of those guys? Were you that guy in the 2+2 forums that would just berate people?
No. I was never on 2+2 because I was part of Team FTR, right? So we had our own t-shirts and we used to meet up in Vegas, and FTR was like, we considered 2+2 like the cesspit, like the mainstream commune cesspit, and we were like this niche that had all these crushers on it. So absolutely not. I've never been on 2+2 apart from briefly to promote my book, and I've always been an advocate for smaller, more intellectually gifted communities than like big, horrible vats of amateurs pretending to be good players. Like 2+2 reminds me of chat pros on stream. Like I stream on a weekly basis for PokerStars, currently Friday mornings, 8 a.m. UK time, check it out. But like on there, you'll get a guy that comes on who's just like, ha ha ha, flop is such easy fold, idiot. Like that, right? And like he's obviously like some recreational player that's not even beaten like 5-0 online, and he thinks he has the right to dictate to someone who's studied the game for 10 years solidly how to play his hand. And 2+2 in my mind back in the day was that, whereas Flop Turn River was like, oh, Ben Sulsky's going to come on and tell this amateur what he's done wrong. Like, where would I rather be, you know? So I was on FTR, and I definitely ascended quite quickly to being the kind of coach on there, because I started coaching quite early in my career as well. I started coaching about 2011, and then I became like the kind of, why have you done this guy, like explain your play, and I just got everyone to basically defend everything they did. So I've always been the academic guy in the game. Sometimes I can be quite harsh and quite direct, but I've never been the guy that's just going to like berate people and tell them that they're horrible without helping them. I might berate you, but I'll help you at the same time, sort of thing.
Right. And I'm going to get to some of the coaching stuff and how you got into that as well. When you were playing in the beginning, what were your most prominent leaks?
Man, I guess like what everybody's prominent leaks were back then, only they weren't known as leaks because we didn't have the GTO revolution yet. So back in 2010, when I like was running really good for like a whole year, which can happen, right? You can run really good for 400,000 hands or 500,000 hands easily. So when that happened and I was winning at like 8 BB per 100 for like a year, basically I had a ton of leaks and I would bet too big. And with like hands that shouldn't be betting big, I wouldn't protection bet enough, but no one did back then. So like on the turn in the river, there were no block sizes at all, which is ludicrous because sometimes you have a lot of thin value hands that you need to block instead of doing anything else with. And I guess as well, just like not bluffing enough. Like nobody really bluffed enough. So even though I was like more aggro than most regs, it was still like considered spewy to barrel the turn with no equity. Like if you posted a hand on King 8 deuce deuce where you barreled with Jack 10, someone would be like spew. And this word was like this taboo thing that just basically branded every act of aggression without lots of equity bad. So we were like conditioned to think that we had to be super polar, but we could only bluff with lots of equity. So we weren't actually polar at all, right? We were just betting with equity and EV, and no one was ever indifferent. No one was ever meant to like call us. So I guess my leaks were what everyone else's was back then. I didn't have small bets. I didn't have over bets. I bet too big with loads of hands, and I didn't actually bluff without equity often enough in spots where you have to. So lots of stuff.
Did you said when the solvers started coming out, that's where you saw a big increase in your skill. Is that how you diagnose those leaks, or?
Yeah, I'm a very methodical person, as you know, and like my coaching is all about, it's very scientific, right? It's like, what can we back up based on actual fact? How can we objectively prove how can we prove what we're doing in an empirical, objective, rational way that is defensible? So that helped me a ton because I always got this sort of sneaking dread when I was coaching poker back in the day, pre-solver, and it was a strange sense of I actually have no idea what the fuck I'm talking about, and I'm just blagging my way through this. And I think everybody felt like that to an extent, because we were all doing things so wrong, and we probably suspected they were wrong, we just didn't know how, and we were justifying it by being like, oh, here's some old adage from 2008 that we're going to use to justify this place. So I'll correct you slightly. When solvers came out, I got worse initially because I started being like, I'll copy this solver, and I couldn't do it. I didn't know why it was doing what it was doing, and I was all over the place. And my game actually got a hell of a lot worse in like 2013 when I started working with the solver for the first time. Or was it 14? I don't remember. But anyway, after that, when solvers became more commonplace and people learned how to use them, I mean, it's taken me years to refine and build up my inputs for solvers, the way I study them, what I get out of them. But nowadays, I'm definitely able to actually use them and harness them in a way that is like creating a really solid objective framework. So yeah, it's taken me ages to get really good at using solvers, but definitely there was a year where I started using them that made my game worse before it made it better. And I think that's kind of the theme with solvers. You know, things will get worse before they get better, unless you have a very strong coach helping you use a solver from the beginning in the right way.
Yeah, and I've heard you and seen you advise people not to immediately just dive into solvers early on. That you've said that can actually cause more harm than good.
Yeah, I think so. And actually, it's strange because I am an advocate of using solvers at a very early point, but only if you know how to do it right. So I'd say, like, if you're on your own and you don't understand the sources of EV, if you don't understand that checking the flop can give you more EV than betting because of all the gains of checking, or that betting can give you more EV than checking because of the gains of betting, and you don't understand why you should call a certain hand as opposed to some other hand, like, it's very hard to make any sense out of a solver output, right? Like, you're just going to look at it and be like, oh, it says this, but that's going to be like trying to memorize a random mosaic pattern and replicate it, or a random string of numbers or binary and replicate it. So if you don't have someone to show you what the sort of atomic configuration of EV is, like how it's made up, you're probably going to do more harm to yourself than good. But if you get someone from the very beginning helping you use it in a good way, then, you know, it's very, very different and very, very useful. It can be.
So when you get a new student, what advice do you typically give them in terms of just starting out? Like, if it's a fresh student, never really played poker before, do you immediately push them to a solver, or do you tell them to read certain different resources, or what? Like, how would you start a brand new person?
I would start them with pure GTO. So basically, like first off, we should be careful, right? Because the problem is that 90% of people in the poker world don't know what GTO means. So first off, when I say pure GTO, I don't mean playing a set strategy to copy a solver that only works against other solvers. This is nonsense. Like, GTO works best against a random strategy as well, and it works best against most strategies. It's just that sometimes you can tweak it and adjust from it to play much better. So when I say I'd start them off with pure GTO, what I mean is that I would teach them what makes plays better or worse than other plays in the absence of big exploitative reads. Like, I've taught people who I'll say, right, what do you think we should do on the flop? And they'll go, if this guy was folding all the time to a c-bet, I would c-bet. And it's like, that's so useless. That's so incredibly redundant that I don't even know where to start with it, right? Like, of course, if this extreme thing happened, you would do this. Like, a monkey could do that. A gorilla could sit there and be like, oh, he's c-betting 100%. I'm not going to fold third pair. Like, good for you. But if you don't know the EV of continuing third pair to a 1/3 c-bet in general, you don't know where to adjust from. So I'd start with this rank beginner by saying, here's a solver. This is actually something that's very, very powerful in the right hands, and we're going to learn how to use it. Get Pio Pro. I'll set up all the inputs for you, and I'll show you how to start interpreting sims from the beginning. Look at the modern generation. Look at the kids that are crushing. Are they walking into the card room going, I don't like GTO. GTO's only works against the best player in the world. No, they're actually thinking about GTO from the beginning. They're fascinated for it because they understand that poker's an objective, empirical thing with fixed values, at least at equilibrium. So I would start the beginner with that outlook. I'd want him to see that plays have values in poker objectively. And only if people are doing things very differently can you change. And only if you know how they're doing it differently can you change. And only if you know how to change from the right place and to the right extent and in the right direction should you change. So actually building up the fundamental of like what's better than what and how to interpret a solver from the beginning is like so important. That's why like every student I get, I'll push into that theoretical path. And some of them I'll be resistant to it. Some of them will be like, oh, but I'm playing 5NL. I don't need GTO at 5NL. It's such nonsense. It's such bullshit, man. You need GTO from the beginning because it's just the science of the game. It's like saying, oh, I want to play chess, but I'm playing against a bad player, so I don't need to know how the knight moves. Like, what? This is nonsense. So I would get them from the very beginning on that path, basically, and show them that GTO can be simple. There are simple GTO concepts, like when you have a vulnerable pair, you are more likely to turn it into a bluff than when you have a less vulnerable pair because of the added bonus of protection. You're more likely to bluff with pocket deuces on ace king 6 than with pocket 5s on ace king 6. And if you understand that, you understand the objective fact about the game that will help you in millions of different situations, and that's much more useful than being like, oh, this guy, I have this soul read on this guy, and just making stuff up because you don't know how to think about the game. What I hate the most is when people invent reads and nonsense because they're trying to fill a void where they have no theory. So get them on the theory from the beginning, honestly, is the only way you can make a good poker player.
And you mentioned the micros. Would you, if bankroll wasn't an issue, would you advise people to play the micros or skip the micros?
Skip. Rake trap, massive rake, just a waste of time. Can't make any money. Not exciting, not meaningful to you, not giving you like a sense of fulfillment. Because like, let's face it, we like gambling. We like playing a game for money. Like, we enjoy this as poker players, right? So if you're playing for 2 cents and stuff, it's just going to teach you that, I don't know, that like, it's going to teach you so many weird things because people are going all in pre for like a full 100 big blinds as a 3-bet and they're just doing all this weird shit. I think you get better faster playing against like semi-competent opposition quicker, and also you get a bit more, you know, of a catalyst to want to work on your game because you can see that, you know, if you win 10 buy-ins, you'll have $250 and maybe you can use that to invest in coaching or in a solver, or you can just move up stakes or whatever. I just think there's no point really starting off at 5NL, 10NL, because it would take years to beat these games given that the rate can be like 13 BB per 100. Like, you have to be very, very good to beat 10NL. What's the point? I'd say start at 25. Like, if you can't afford or don't want to invest, you know, 30 or 40 buy-ins at 25NL, poker is not for you, because you're going to have to invest in so much in this game these days. You're going to need software, you're going to need a bankroll, you're going to probably need coaching, you're going to need video subscriptions, you're going to need tuition. Like, you just can't be a cheapskate in poker. You can't start off at 2NL and like build your bankroll all the way up really quickly while also paying for all these things. It's a ridiculous path to take. So the investment way is the only way these days. It really is. It's the only way that makes any sense. And if you don't want to do that, then just accept that poker for you is not ever going to turn into a serious thing. It's going to be a pastime and a hobby that you're never that good at.
So if you were just having someone just starting out, would you tell them to get a coach immediately then?
Yeah. 100%, because the amount of bad habits you pick up when you're first learning the game is very destructive. Like, when you're an infant, if you have a traumatic, terrible childhood where you're getting abused, you have a really much less chance at a good and happy life, right? Because of how strong the neural pathways are at that point in your development. Now, when you're learning poker, you're generally not an infant, you're an adult, but the things you learn right at the start always kind of form the backbone of your game. So, like, even though my backbone has been completely refined by thousands of hours, and I mean this literally thousands of hours of GTO study, people who haven't done thousands of hours of study still have the same backbone that they had in 2011 and 2005 and 1997, right? Like, that's the problem. So if you learn a ton of bad habits in your first 6 months, not only are you probably just going in the wrong direction, but you're also adding to the work you're going to have to do when you have a coach, because he's not only going to have to teach you good stuff and give you a foundation, he's also going to have to rip out all this old rotten, you know, floorboards in your game and replace them with good ones. So you're just adding to what you're going to have to pay in the long term if you prolong coaching. Sometimes people email me and they're like, my plan is to play 80,000 hands and then get a coach. I'm just like, oh my god, like, seriously? You want to play 80,000 hands as a losing player with bad habits and ingrain all of that, and then get me to fix it. Okay, sure, that's a terrible idea. Someone with that level of decision making probably shouldn't even bother with poker at all, quite frankly, because that's just crazy.
So I guess with that, what do you think makes a good versus a bad student?
A good student is someone who understands logic and objectivity and can see that things actually matter in the real observable realm, independent of reads and made up exploits. A good student is somebody who is willing to take criticism in a way where they don't get offended, but they're also willing to argue their case when they think something is right. A good student does homework, he asks how to do things before doing them, and a good student doesn't just play volume as a loser for years and years and play 50k hands a month as a loser and never change their game, right? A losing player. A bad student does all of those things. A bad student ignores what you say, goes back to their old habits, grinds 60k hands a month even though he has no expectation of winning, makes up reads, imagines, uses massive sweeping generalizations like they don't bluff, they don't fold, ignores GTO, thinks that GTO is some bizarre alien realm that only matters if the other guy's playing GTO or some bullshit like that, and has bad role models and influences in the poker world and is drawn like a moth to the flame to bad influences and weak coaches and nonsense made up exploitative stuff.
So what would be your biggest pet peeve as a coach?
I'm getting really angry throughout this interview because I'm now just thinking about all the things I hate in poker. Biggest pet peeve, man. Students that argue with theory by saying some made up, generalized, exploitative read. So my biggest pet peeve would be when I'm like, and as we can see, 6-7 suited is a very high frequency check raise on this board because we have it blocks trips. Say the board's like Queen 5-5, right? It blocks 6-5, it blocks 7-5 suited. It has backdoor straight draws. It doesn't block his weakest hands, which are like 10-9s, right? And stuff like that on that board. It's a very good raise in theory. And then the student goes, yeah, but my worry is that they just don't fold. That's my biggest pet peeve.
So I guess to kind of go back a little bit, why did you begin coaching?
Because I like teaching, believe it or not. I actually really enjoy helping people, and I really like seeing people progress. Like when I was a kid, I used to teach people, my friends, who would never ever be good at chess because they weren't wired that way, chess, and try and make them better and stuff like that. And you know, kind of like everyone I've ever been with romantically, like I've always ended up teaching them something. It's kind of like, I guess you could say it's like my love language as well, is to try and help people with things and make them better. But it's also like something I've always just enjoyed and I've always been quite articulate and quite good at teaching. And I've taught English before and I've taught various things, and it's just the natural thing for me. I'm too sociable of a person to sit in front of a computer and just study and grind poker 12 hours a day. I would end up in an insane asylum if I tried to do that. Like, I know I would. So because I am very logical, and I love logical puzzles, and I love like games, it's in my family, but I also love like socializing and helping people at the same time. Coaching was kind of like my destiny, you could say. It's kind of the only thing I could ever have done. Like, I don't think I could have done anything with my life other than be a poker teacher, because it's the only thing that combines all of my passions like that. And I think I'm kind of professionally, I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be, which is really nice, and I'm really thankful for that.
Yeah, that I've been asked by multiple people why you would focus so much on coaching instead of just trying to play the nosebleed limits and studying more, you know, just on your own game and focusing on making that better as opposed to spending time helping others. So, I mean, when you have all these students that I'm sure most of them aspire to play high limits or to be, you know, in their own minds successful at poker. Do you ever consider focusing more on your own game and going and trying to play these higher stakes, bigger games?
What I'll say is that I can focus heavily on my own game in order to get better at teaching, because right now I'm doing like 6 or 7 hours of teaching a day, oftentimes during the week. Don't do any at the weekends, and then I'm making training content. There might be other products that I make, you know, making like pre-flop trainers at the moment and all of this. So much of my time goes into working for a guaranteed high hourly that gives me a really good living and gives, you know, me and my girlfriend a really good life, and just like, it's just more money than I ever thought I would ever make, basically. That I don't really I'm not really that motivated by just money. I'm motivated by happiness, right, as the currency of success. So if I've got enough money to technically be happy if I make the right choices with it, I'm not really wanting to make loads more money above and beyond that. And the thing is, these days, that actually, ask anybody, the hourly playing 500 Zoom and the hourly coaching or making training content or having a business, the latter is higher, actually. So yeah, I do love working on my own game, and I study all the time. I've got my left-hand monitor here, my left-hand computer is the big beast one that does all the sims, and that's the one that I study. If I've got a spare 20 minutes, I'll drill a certain spot, and I'll make sure I'm getting really, really good at it, and I love that. And I love putting in a bit of volume and just applying it and seeing that I'm getting better. But no, I don't have the time right now to just grind really high stakes, and it would be less money per, bead of blood, sweat, and tears, and less money per hour than what I'm doing right now, I believe. So I think I've made the right choice on that one.
And then do you find that teaching others is actually a good way to learn yourself, that the most effective? Are you like an active learner?
Yeah, I'm a very active learner, and if I'm not talking to somebody, I learn more slowly as well. It depends though, because sometimes I'm teaching people way, way below my level, right? So what I can teach them will not help me in the slightest, because it's just stuff that's like, you teaching your son, or daughter or whatever, how to, like, the alphabet. That's probably not going to help you understand the alphabet better, right? So some sessions are like that, but when I do work with somebody strong, like I work with them, Simon Belzile and Akshar Patel, like my two coaches in our team coaching program, who coach under me. When I work with them, for example, they're obviously very strong players, and we talk through a sim and we talk through trainer work and we do drills, and we're both learning together. Although I'm guiding it and I'm teaching them, I'm learning about 40% of what they're learning, probably. So that's fantastic. That's like I'm learning and studying and being paid at the same time while doing something that I quite like. So it really is like, I complain a lot about my job. Doesn't everyone? I sit here and I'm like, oh, I have to get up at 8 a.m. or I have to teach this guy who's a bit annoying, or I have to like argue with this guy that's a bit argumentative, and I'll like focus on the bad things sometimes. But realistically, poker coaching's great. It's such a lucrative and well-suited field to my skill set and my life ethos as well, because it gives you the freedom to sort of live at your own pace. And I was always very unhappy having a boss, like very unhappy doing bad jobs and having a boss in the past. So yeah, I think it's a great lifestyle for me.
So what led you to end up writing poker books and going that route over just studying or over just teaching other players?
I think with the book thing, it was kind of like, I want to create something permanent. Like when you're teaching, all you create, you don't really create anything permanent. You create memories which erode and corrode with time in people's heads, and most of them are gone within a week, honestly, unless the student's really conscientious and disciplined and revises a lot. So I think like what you get out of writing a book is you organize all of your ideas, you gain publicity, and you create like a memento to your work that's permanent. And I think that's why I wrote the Grounder's Manual, and from there that gave me a lot of exposure and stuff, and that was great. And I'm really glad I wrote that book. It was a slog, and I don't enjoy the process of writing a book very much, but I do enjoy the achievement of having written a book, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. Can you describe how that process went? Did you set aside a couple hours a day? How long did it take to write it?
Yeah, so basically I set aside like 3 or 4 hours a day at first, and I was literally sitting at my desk in my old flat, like bashing away at the keyboard, creating figures. And I was really bad like with computers back then as well. Like, even, sounds really silly, but like even just like my skills within Word or PowerPoint or writing in HTML were basically non-existent then, so it took me a lot longer than what it would now. And I bashed away at that for like 3 or 4 hours a day. Then I got really jaded and burnt out at one point in sort of late 2015, and actually just like stopped for like 3 months. I just couldn't bring myself to do it. And then I got a jolt of energy in the new year in 2016. I just forced myself to finish it, and then published in April 16 the Grounder's Manual. But yeah, there was a point where it could have gone either way, where I'd burnt myself out. And I think when you're writing a big project like that, little and often is the key. If you do too many hours per day for too long, you might just get super burnt out and not want to do it ever again. We have to manage our motivation like a finite resource, I think, as humans.
Was that the big takeaway from you personally in going through that process, or did you learn anything else about yourself and that maybe you could even apply to your coaching or poker?
Um, I definitely learned that I was better at organizing things and presenting material than most other people within poker. Obviously, there's very good textbook writers in other disciplines, but I think generally the poker player's kind of a disorganized mess. Like, he has all these ideas and he's very good at thinking in small domains, but like when you try and get a poker player to like organize himself and write a book, I don't think it really happens very often. I think there are very, very few good authors in poker, and no offense to any of the good authors out there, because there are some that I like, but I think in general, most poker books that have been written are terrible. And it taught me that I'm quite a good writer, actually, academically, and that I used to think of myself as like, oh, I want to be an author, I want to write fiction one day, right? But that taught me that I'm actually much better at writing non-fiction and academically in textbooks than I am at writing. Any creative writing I try is generally a failure. So it kind of made me drop one goal that was probably not going to work for me, and pick up the goal of actually like creating content. And it's the same with videos, as well. Like, there are some really, really good video producers out there, but there's a lot of people whose videos are just them playing, and that's fine. But there aren't that many gifted organizers of poker content that know how to structure objective, permanent content in a good way. And it kind of taught me that like I could do that was suited to my talents. I think so much of life is like figuring out what you're good at and then shaping your world around that. Like, you're an attorney, you probably, all the skills you've developed now, it would be really crazy for you to go off and like become a baker with those skills or something, right? So I think it's just about getting that right, like playing to your strengths and shaping your world around that. And writing books is just another way of me kind of doing that. Sounds kind of cheesy, but it's another way of like spending my time in a way that's suited to my skills.
Do you ever think you'll write a sequel to the Grinder's Manual?
The Crusher's Manual, I was thinking about it this morning when I woke up. For some reason, it was just there in my head, the Crusher's Manual. Yes, basically, in my opinion, nobody has done a good enough job of organizing solver outputs in GTO in a way that's accessible to players that aren't geniuses or logical machines or human solvers. And so I'd really like to write an up-to-date modern GTO, but practical sort of applied GTO Bible. It wouldn't focus that much on exploitative play at all, although it would have a couple of chapters on it. It would mostly be about how to make game theory concepts digestible and understandable to the masses, because that's what's going to make you a strong thinker. And I really want to do it, but I'm intimidated right now by the sheer enormity of the project, and I'm kind of tiptoeing around it like an elephant in the room at the moment, and just like being wary to sort of dive in, because if I dive in, I'm terrified that I'll sink under that commitment and I'll have taken on too much. So I'm kind of procrastinating right now through fear of becoming totally overwhelmed and miserable by taking on a huge project that I then feel compelled to finish. It's a weird situation. I'd really like to, though. I think I will do it eventually, but I might space it out a bit more. It might take me a year or two to complete.
So besides that, do you have any other projects that you're doing right now?
We're making a poker solver at the moment for a trainer for preflop, so that should be live, if not now, then pretty soon. So myself and Simon have been working on that, and it's going to it's applied GTO, so it's derived from simple preflop game theory solutions that are objectively sound, and then we've made the frequencies rounded to 25%, 50%, 75%, or obviously 100 or 0 for taking actions pre, so that we're not like, oh, this is the 4-bet 62.1% of the time and I call 19%. We're trying to stay away from that kind of like a lot of programs exist like this already, but they don't simplify it, they don't humanize the output, they just tell you the solver output. And I think you could get hold of them, but it'd be more useful to work with something like this. So that's why we're building that at the moment. Aside from that, not really, just the normal stuff I do for various places that I get paid, contracted to do, and private coaching.
Gotcha. Well, I think that's pretty much all I have for you.
Cool. That wasn't very personal at all. I was like worried there was going to be like way more, I don't know, exposing questions there. That was all very like poker related.
We can do a volume 2 if you want.
We can do a volume 2, yeah, for sure. That sounds good. But yeah, like that was fun. Takeaways from that generally, like I know I ranted a lot there about like how people annoy me, like what types of students annoy me, and like what types of approaches to the game can be really like pet peeves. But ideally, like I just want people who hit me up for coaching in the future to, or who will get coached by anyone for that matter, to be a bit more open-minded to game theory. I just think that, I want to say this now, I think we should try and kill off exploitative poker as being somebody's backbone. I think like the days of exploitative poker being your style or your mold should be gone, and that theory should always be that, and then the exploit is just the patch that gets put on top of it. I think that's what I'm trying to do. So if you want to contact me for coaching, or my team for coaching, that's the approach you should expect. Hunter, I wish you all the best with your 5 a.m. Poker exploits, and we'll get you back on the show soon, man.
Thanks. Sounds good. It was good talking to you, Pete.
You too. Right, guys, take care. carrotcorner.com for more from me. Check out that trainer. Hopefully it's available now, or it will be soon. Check out the trainer page on my website for that. If you want to be on the podcast, or you know someone who does, or you're semi-famous, or just have an interesting angle on the game, then please reach out. You can email me at admin@carrotcorner.com. I'll see you guys in the next one, and thank you for listening.